For decades, Pam Grier has been one of Hollywood's most electrifying icons. The woman who broke barriers, shattered stereotypes, and redefined what strength and femininity meant on screen. But behind the camera, her journey wasn't paved with glamour or ease. It was marked by heartbreak, controversy, and moments that Hollywood would rather forget. Long before anyone had heard of Will Smith, before The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air became a global sensation, Pam Grier had already built a name that demanded attention. Born in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, in 1949, Pam grew up moving from base to base. Her father was an Air Force mechanic, her mother a nurse, and by the time she was a teenager, she had learned what independence truly meant. She was fierce, ambitious, and determined to make something of herself. But Hollywood in the early 1970s wasn't ready for someone like her, a black woman who could fight, act, and command the screen without apology. Then came the blaxploitation era, and Pam Grier became its undisputed queen. With films like Coffee, Foxy Brown, and Sheba, Baby, she brought to life characters who were unapologetically powerful, women who took justice into their own hands and never waited for a man to save them. She wasn't just acting, she was making a statement. But that power came at a cost. Hollywood pigeonholed her as the tough woman, the one who could fight, curse, and seduce, but not the one who could love, feel, or lead a mainstream story without violence. Even as she became a symbol of empowerment for millions, Pam often found herself typecast, struggling to find roles that matched her depth and intelligence. Still, she kept pushing forward, working alongside legends like Richard Pryor, Freddie Prinze Sr., and Jackie Brown director Quentin Tarantino, who would later resurrect her career with a role that would define her legacy. But in between those years of highs and lows, there was a chapter many fans never knew about: her connection to one of television's most beloved sitcoms, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. In the early 1990s, as Will Smith's career exploded and NBC looked for guest stars who could add flair and nostalgia, Pam Grier was brought in to play Janet, one of Will's aunts, a strong, confident woman who instantly lit up the screen. Her chemistry with the cast was undeniable. She brought elegance and fire to every scene. But behind the laughter and charisma, something went wrong, something that would ensure Pam never returned to that iconic set again. According to crew whispers and later interviews with those involved, tension started quietly, almost invisibly. Pam Grier, a seasoned veteran who had worked with Hollywood's biggest names, found herself in a different kind of environment, one led by a young, fast-rising star in his early 20s. Will Smith, though charming and respectful, was still learning to balance fame, authority, and the pressure of carrying a hit series on his shoulders. She expected focus, discipline, and mutual respect. But sitcom sets were different, faster-paced, improvisational, filled with energy and youthful spontaneity. As some reports later claimed, Pam found the atmosphere chaotic, at times even unprofessional. She allegedly expressed frustration over long waits, loose scripts, and on-set behavior that clashed with her old-school Hollywood mindset. To some, she was assertive and principled. To others, she was difficult. That label, difficult, is one that Hollywood has long used against strong women, especially women of color. It's the word that shuts doors quietly, the one that ensures the phone stops ringing. Pam Grier, despite her legendary status, was not immune. Rumors began circulating that she had clashed not just with production staff but subtly with Will Smith himself over creative differences. Some said she questioned her character's direction. Others hinted that her professionalism was misunderstood as rigidity. Whatever the truth, one thing was clear. After her brief appearance, Pam Grier was never invited back to The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. For many fans, her absence was never explained. She simply vanished from the show's storyline, another forgotten guest character in television history. But for Pam, it was another reminder that Hollywood's respect is conditional. Decades later, in interviews, she would speak candidly about how her outspokenness and integrity often cost her roles. "I wasn't going to be a puppet," she once said. "If you can't respect me, you can't direct me." That line, though powerful, was one that studios and networks often saw as defiance. After The Fresh Prince, Pam continued to work, but opportunities grew fewer. She appeared in smaller TV roles, independent films, and guest appearances that never quite matched the weight of her talent. It wasn't until Quentin Tarantino came calling in 1997 with Jackie Brown that Pam Grier truly got the recognition she deserved, and even then, she described how the industry had almost forgotten her. "I had to remind people I was still alive," she said, half laughing, half bitter. Her performance in Jackie Brown earned her Golden Globe and SAG nominations and reminded Hollywood that Pam Grier wasn't just a relic of the 70s. She was a force of nature who had been ahead of her time. But fame, as she knew all too well, is fleeting. In the years that followed, she struggled with serious health issues, including cervical cancer, the same disease that took her mother. She survived it through sheer willpower and faith, using her experience to advocate for women's health awareness. But while she recovered physically, emotionally she carried the scars of decades spent fighting an industry that didn't always value her voice. Looking back, the Fresh Prince incident, whether it was creative tension, generational differences, or simple misunderstanding, became symbolic of something larger. It wasn't just about one show or one conflict. It was about a pattern that countless women in Hollywood faced. Being labeled difficult for demanding the same respect men received by default. Today, when people look back on Pam Grier's career, they often remember her as the fierce heroine, the gun-wielding Avenger of the 70s, the cool, confident Jackie Brown of the 90s. But behind that toughness was a woman who wanted connection, respect, and truth. Her autobiography, Foxy, My Life in 3 Acts, reveals a life far deeper and more painful than any role she played. From surviving assaults and heartbreaks to watching friends self-destruct under fame's pressure. She wrote about being misunderstood, about Hollywood's double standards, and about how every no she heard became fuel for her resilience. Even now, in her 70s, Pam Grier remains unapologetically herself, living quietly in Colorado, raising horses, writing, and mentoring young artists. She has said she forgives those who underestimated her, but she has not forgotten how quickly Hollywood turns its back when you stop playing along. The Fresh Prince chapter may have been small in the grand scope of her career, but its echo is huge, a reminder that even legends can be sidelined when they refuse to compromise their dignity. In the end, Pam Grier's story isn't one of bitterness, but of endurance. She walked through an industry that often saw her as too bold, too outspoken, too much, and she came out the other side still standing, still defiant, still Foxy Brown. So when fans today ask why she never returned to The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, the truth might be simple: she didn't need to. Her legacy was already bigger than the sitcom, bigger than the controversy, bigger than the rumors. She didn't vanish. Hollywood just couldn't keep up with her. Pam Grier is proof that sometimes, walking away isn't failure, it's power. And though the industry tried to silence her, decades later, her voice still echoes, fierce, beautiful, and utterly unforgettable.